I have officially tried to film this video 3 to 4 times. I've lost count at this point. It's probably to be expected because I'm new to doing this and I'm highly and overly critical of myself. If I don't get this right, I swear to God I'm never making another video again. Hey there, my name's Portia. Welcome back to my channel. Yeah, and I just hit my elbow super hard on my bookcase. I just want to talk about the show You on Netflix. So let's talk about it. It's really hard to talk about a show like this because I feel like it's kind of complex. Not super complex, a hard concept to follow. It's just there's a lot of moving pieces, there's a lot of characters, and it feels kind of hard to shove it all into one 20-minute video. But if you do like this video, please hit that thumbs up button so that I know that I'm on the right track. It was originally released on Lifetime. Kind of makes sense to me because I feel like Lifetime has this very specific way that they film their like TV shows and original movies and stuff. If you've ever watched like the Client List, I believe that was on Lifetime. That show with Julia Stiles where she plays like a prostitute. Blue Diaries, Blue something. But I guess it didn't do well, which is pretty funny to me since Pretty Little Liars just ended like not that long ago. I think. I don't know. I didn't watch that show. But since Shay Mitchell is on it, I would think that that would really give it a boost because people love Pretty Little Liars so much. I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you were a PLL fan. It came out on Lifetime, didn't do well on Lifetime. Put it on Netflix and all of a sudden it's like all anyone was talking about during the month of December. And so I decided to check it out. And I was actually pretty surprised that I kind of liked it. I figured to keep this video short, we'll kind of talk about the popular themes throughout the show and my overall thought process going into next season. I think the biggest theme going on in this show is the theme of the toxic relationship and kind of what that might look like for different types of relationships. Okay, one cohesive thought. All right. First, let's start about the toxic relationship between Joe and Beck. I think that one is clearly the most present. It's the one that we're talking about for the entirety of this season. What makes Joe and Beck's relationship toxic? Well, it's a multitude of things. Joe and Beck have a very codependent relationship, right? So she depends on him to be consistent because that's what she's been missing in her life. And he's dependent on her loving him. There, I think that actually makes sense. If Beck's not happy, then Joe is immediately ready to like fix it. Like he wants to be able to swoop in, take care of all of her messes, which also kind of makes her, what's the word I'm looking for here? She owes Joe something for taking care of her life for her, essentially. And like that's not how relationships are supposed to work. You should be encouraging each other, right, to like live your best life, be your best self. You shouldn't come in and try to like do it for them. So like I would say that's the largest flaw throughout the show is this codependent nature. If you see me looking over here, it's because I have notes on the show and like I'm trying to look at them, but like not be obvious about it. My neighbors are like stomping around. No one wants me to film this video and I don't know why. I'm not talking about a government conspiracy. I'm just trying to talk about a stupid show on Netflix. But I digress. So we also see this going on between Beck and Peach, right? Peach needs Beck to need her. And Beck feels like she has to make Peach feel needed so that Peach feels like her life is on track. Beck talks about Peach being depressed and like having suicidal thoughts or tendencies, and that the one time that we see Beck and Peach go to the hospital wasn't the first time Peach had gone to the hospital or done something crazy to get Beck's attention. Now we don't know for sure if all of this was to get Beck's attention. I feel like because Peach is dead, we never really got confirmation on all the things that Joe was thinking Peach was doing. But I think it's pretty clear to see that to some degree, it was all a facade to keep Beck in Peach's pocket. Back to Joe and Beck, Joe was stalking Beck, so obviously he had trust issues. Even before they started dating or being in a relationship, he already didn't trust her. Who's to say if that's from like his weird upbringing that we still don't know, or if it's because he was cheated on by Candace. Not that Beck knows any of this really until the end, and even then she never really knows the full spectrum of how much Joe was actually inside of Beck's life without Beck knowing it. Because all of these relationships have to do with Beck, because again, Joe has no friends. Like the big waving red flag, he has no friends, which is weird. But because of that, we don't really get to know too much more about Joe and his other relationships. And like Beck and Benji, that clearly was a toxic relationship. Like he didn't give her the time of day unless it worked for him and his schedule, and she couldn't stand up for herself when she knew she was being mistreated and disrespected. The unfortunate part about all of these relationships, and I could go on, like the relationship between Beck and her stepmom, the relationship between Beck and her dad, the relationship between Beck and her professor before she gets moved to the other TA position, like all of them toxic. Wasn't that Beck was not she's not a dumb girl. She's very smart, incredibly smart, one might say, and very intuitive to her emotions. That means to some degree she knew that she was participating in bad relationships, but she hadn't gotten to a point in her own personal journey to be able to start ridding herself of those. Joe, unfortunately, came in and did that for her, which means she's not really growing as an individual. And that's like the saddest part about the whole thing. I feel like that got really deep for a second. Another really big thing that I feel like they harped on a lot was this like slut shaming vibe. It seemed like everyone kind of wanted to attack Beck for being herself. It seemed like they were insinuating that she couldn't be funny and flirtatious and also be taken seriously. But when she goes to that like Renaissance fair or whatever with her dad and her stepmom pulls up her corset, insinuating that she's showing too much skin. She's not wearing pasties, so they really just harp so much on like the way she looks and presents herself as if she should cover up more, because then she would be taken like a serious writer. It's unfair, and I wish that there was someone that was more fighting that battle throughout the show and being like, hey, like, you shouldn't be thought of like this, or like you're not a bad person for wanting to date around or to not be monogamous. The biggest problem here is just that Beck's not very good at communicating. Like things can look good on the outside, because from the outside, like even Beck's friends say like, you guys seem great together. I think you guys are soulmates. And that is all fine and dandy, but they don't know what's going on in your relationship. We have to put up this facade like everything's great, I feel great, everyone says it's great, so it's great, but it's not really great. So like, why do we sit here and try to pretend like it is? And going back to the dependency thing just for a second, they also signify that with the relationship between Claudia and Paco and her boyfriend and Paco, like that whole situation. She's dependent on him to keep a roof above their head, and he's dependent on her to be around so that he has someone to take out all of his anger and frustration on. So it's just like the whole thing is just littered with these bad relationships and no one communicating and just like doing the right thing and like leaving. So I think there's a continuous theme of like the social media life versus real life personas going on too, because as we see, Beck online is a lot more put together, seems a lot not smarter, but just like healthier, as far as mentally healthier on her social media, whereas her life is quite literally a mess. Like usually when people say my life is a mess, I'm just imagining that like they forgot to do their laundry yesterday and like ran out of socks. Like her life is legitimately quite a mess. And something that she really dealt with being a writer is that she was really concerned about public thoughts on her, and I think so much so that it prohibited her from really being able to put her raw emotions onto paper or Kindle, I don't know, whatever. There are points in the story where she gets breakthroughs and she has success in her writing, but I think that those successes really only come when she's distancing herself from Joe, and I think that's something Joe never picks up on at any point, is realizing that he's actually hindering her from being able to write. Like, she's hindering herself to some degree too, don't get me wrong, but she would have figured it out on her own eventually. I think that's what their time apart shows, is that like she was totally capable of getting her shit together, but she was just really reliant on having someone in her life to share it with. Is she never got to just be happy with her own success and just focus on herself. She was just really focused on everyone else and what they thought of her. And I think the last like topic I kind of want to bring up on this is that there's this theme of doing anything for love, but what's the difference between love and infatuation, and where is the line drawn? Can be argued that Joe did everything he did because he really loved Beck, but I don't actually believe that. I think Joe wants to be a hero. He wants to feel better about himself. I think he's insecure about probably where he's at in his life. Something we never talk about is what is Joe's actual plan for his life? Like, did he want to just work at Mooney's and be a bookstore owner? Or did he want to be a writer and he was unsuccessful? Was he trying to live vicariously through Beck? But then you have to think, like, he was also in a similar relationship with Candace, right? So he probably stalked her and everything too. So was he living vicariously through her? She was in a band. She had nothing to do with writing per se. But then again, now that I think about it, her band was named after like a Wuthering Heights quote or something, right? So I guess that's kind of an interesting thing to debate. We also see that in his relationship with Paco, like, he's not really the hero in that scenario either, but he did his best to like try to keep Paco safe in a position where like telling the police wouldn't have necessarily benefited him, and if anything made things worse for either Paco or for himself. So yeah, I think that was like a redeeming quality about Joe, was that he genuinely cared about Paco, and I don't think he ever meant harm to him. And we also kind of get quick glimpses of what Mooney and Joe's relationship was like. So I feel like we just touched on it, and the fact that we see Mooney, me thinking like Mooney was dead this whole time, like, I'm really glad that we actually see Mooney, but I have so many more questions. Are they really that close? It seemed like Mooney was really giving him side-eye, because to me it seemed like they were not totally on good terms. Those are the overall themes I noticed in the show. As far as my opinion on the show, I liked it, but the more I've had time to really analyze and think about it and kind of rewatch it, I feel like there's a lot of things that need to be A, explained, and B, there's a lot of things that could have been completely dropped. For example, there's a lot of characters in this, and I think that's the biggest problem with trying to film this video, is like there's so much to talk about. There is so many twists and turns that it's hard to condense it all. So I hope that next season they maybe drop down the amount of characters, because I thought it was a lot. I was kind of disappointed that like Beck's already dead, or so we're told to believe, because I felt like I was so invested in her life that I wanted to see like what she was gonna do after she learned everything. We never see her physically die, and to me, in shows like this, if you don't physically see someone die, if there's not a corpse, if you don't see the death, it may or may not have happened. I think Peach is the only death that we see off screen, but we do know that there was a gunshot, so, and like her family held a big funeral, so it's like safe to say she's technically dead, but for Beck's sake, I'm not sure. We saw Ron die, so why wouldn't we see Beck too? Candace, I don't mind finding out more about her. I'm obviously curious. I wasn't expecting her to be alive. I was definitely expecting her to be dead, but I don't really know where they're gonna go with this. Like, where has she been? It felt like, couldn't you have just given us one more episode and just made that explanation more clear? But also, I'm coming back to watch next season because you left me on a cliffhanger. So I guess like kudos to them, but also I'm frustrated. Dr. Nikki, by the way, I didn't know John Stamos was going to be in this show, and I'm cool with this casting.
Have mercy.
Did Dr. Nikki ever put the two different stories together? Joe was telling him a fake name and a fake relationship and different, a different place where he worked or whatever, but I still think Dr. Nikki would have been able to put the pieces together. Their stories were so similar and so specific, I don't understand how he could have not made that connection. I hope that we'll see Dr. Nikki's trial to see if he's going to connect those dots and be able to pin it back on Joe. Also, since the Salanders had hired that PI, they let him go after everything went down with Dr. Nikki and they were trying to pin it back to him? Or is that PI still going to be snooping around? Because I don't think that PI believes that Dr. Nikki had anything to do with Peach's murder. I think that he's still going to be checking up on Joe because I think he knows Joe's hiding something. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on that. I know I didn't talk about everything. Like I said, I've tried to film this video 3 different times, and talking about an entire TV show, even if it is only like 13 episodes long, is a lot harder than you think in 20 minutes. So if you want a part 2, or you want to dive deeper, or you want to talk about theories for next season, please let me know in the comments. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it was kind of like more ranty than informational, but I hope that you got something out of it. Again, if you like this video, please hit that big thumbs up button so I know, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you like videos about TV, movies, music, whatever it may be. I do all kinds of stuff on my channel, or at least I hope to in the very near future. I appreciate you for watching, and I will see you next time.